Thank you much. Sorry for the delay in welcoming you back in again. We want to make sure we had it all done, completed correctly first and written up. So, sexual entertainment licence renewal elegance. The subcommittee has carefully considered the application, all of the representations, both written and oral, and paid due regard to the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982, Home Office Guidance, the Human Rights Act and the Equality Act 2010. It was noted that the objections raised, amongst other points set out in full in the report, the following issues. Residential area, late night disruption, other venues had moved from the area, no licensed premises nearby, large groups of males outside may cause women to feel uneasy, particularly late at night, proximity to church, schools and within a residential area, disrepair of building, parking, an increased risk of sexual assault, not in keeping with culture of area, will affect house prices, normalisation of objectification of women, gender equality harms posed by industry upon women. The panel acknowledges the existence of the policy in relation to sex establishment venues generally, but also specifically in relation to the numerical control imposed. Is that any better? Or? The panel acknowledges the existence of the policy in relation to sex establishment venues generally, but also specifically in relation to the numerical control imposed. However, that control is not applicable to existing licences due to the terms of the policy wording. Accordingly, in any event, the panel is free to determine the appropriate number of such establishments in a particular locality without the presumption of refusal. Whilst it is noted that there is some criticism outlined in the objections of the decision to exempt existing licences, the panel's function today is not to reconsider that policy, but to pay due regard to it whilst making its decision. Noting that policy is in effect guidance as to how decisions are made, policy, of course, may be departed from where good reasons make it appropriate to do so. The subcommittee also accepted advice that consideration of whether such establishments ought to exist is not its function or remit. Guidance and case law referred to therein make it clear that more objections cannot be taken into consideration. The decision to be made, except an report and unchallenged assertion of the applicant that the statutory ground of refusal do not play in this case, is whether it remains appropriate for the premises to remain licensed in this locality and whether the applicant is fit or suitable to hold the licence. The subcommittee was satisfied on the evidence given by the applicant that there is no issues, including nothing raised by objectors, in relation to the business benefiting from any other unsuitable person. In light of all the evidence it has heard, the subcommittee has determined that the licence shall be renewed. Reasons are: all the potential grounds for refusal were considered as set out in the report, with particular grounds discounted as set above. The appropriate number of sex establishments for the locality is not considered to be exceeded in this case, and there are no grounds sufficient to warrant a refusal based on the character of the locality, the use to which any premises in a locality are put, or the layout, character or condition of the premises. When considering the locality and proximity to sensitive premises such as schools and a church, the subcommittee attached weight to the fact that the premises has been in this location for 20 years, was not attracting objection from the police or any statutory objector, and little new evidence since last renewal of an adverse impact was provided by those objecting. Whilst the subcommittee is entirely free to decide this area is no longer appropriate, it was the subcommittee's view that many objectors stating the premises was closed when in fact it was operating tends to indicate the lack of first-hand evidence of issues supporting a renewal at this time. Further, the hours of operation for the sexual entertainment, 2200 hours to 0400 hours, are unlikely to have any meaningful impact upon either the schools or church. Also, the premises of the premises is not overall likely to attract considerable attention to passers-by. The subcommittee carefully considered the potential impact upon the equality generally, and also particularly where the premises might discriminate against women in the area when operating. Whilst there is always some scope for offence, it was noticed that the majority of evidence from objectors expressed fears or offered conjecture as to how it might cause discrimination. When balanced against the right to operate a lawful business. When licensed, the subcommittee did not feel it has sufficient direct evidence of concern or actual discrimination. Again, weight was attached to the lack of police representation. The extensive nature of the standard conditions also set out considerable regulation of performers and customers' conduct, particularly through codes of conduct. The suitability of the applicant was considered, and the admitted offence was not felt to be directly relevant to the licensed premises or the operation of a sexual entertainment venues. It was acknowledged that a fine had been paid and steps implemented speedily to address issues. Whilst objectors raised issues at other premises, the subcommittee heard that this did not impact a subsequent renewal and were in fact issues arising from a manager that had subsequently been dismissed. The subcommittee was consignant that the premises also benefited from a premises licence under Licence Act 2003, so refusal of this licence alone would have had limited impact on the potential for late night disturbance. Again, actual first-hand evidence the same was limited. So thank you very much for attending. I believe this decision will actually be emailed out as well and posted out to objectors. And thank you for your time today. Did you wish to say anything about any extra legal advice or no? Okay, thank you very much. I now close the meeting.